Welcome to Eagle Brook Church. Thank you so much for joining us this weekend. Now, some of you may already know this, some of you may not, but we actually have viewing groups that meet in various places across the country where people gather to watch Eagle Brook Church online. With that being said, I'd like to extend a special welcome to our newest viewing group at Hennepin County Jail. Come on, let's make some noise for them. We hope that these services encourage you and speak to you during this time. We are continuing a series that we kicked off last week called Living Life Backward, based on a book in the Old Testament called Ecclesiastes. It is written by what historians believe to be one of the richest people to ever live, and his name is Solomon. Now, you might be listening or watching today, and you don't consider yourself a church person, but what I want you to know, whether you're a Christian or not, I think every single one of us should be paying attention to Ecclesiastes, because essentially it's a journal from one of the most successful humans to ever live at the end of his life. It's like he's looking back and going, here's some things and some perspectives that I have on life that I think you should adhere to. He's experienced everything money can buy and discovered something most of us take way too long to figure out. Now, as we go through this series, I want to encourage you to read Ecclesiastes on your own, and we're helping with that. I encourage you to join our Bible reading plan that provides a daily devotion on the Eagle Brook Church app. If you haven't downloaded that, I encourage you to do that today. Now, we've also drawn a ton in our messages in this series from a book written by Dave Gibson called Living Life Backward. And we encourage you all to check that out as well. Now, today, I want you to know that I absolutely love this idea of living life backwards. And I love the entire book of Ecclesiastes because if I'm honest, I think Solomon writes how I think. Solomon just has a little bit more permission to be honest because he's not here, okay? And I'm here and I kind of got to be sensitive and think about it. But the reason that I think that he writes how I think is because he talks about something that most of us don't like to talk about, death. But the reality is, none of us are getting off this planet alive. I don't know if you knew that, but that's what we all got. My son Jackson, who's getting ready to turn 8, about a year ago, learned that people, well, they actually die. I mean, I don't know, when he was born, no one gave us an instruction manual that said, hey, here's the age when you tell the child that they could die. Like, is that 6, is that 8? I don't know when you're supposed to do that, but he learned about death when he was learning about our family tree. Aunts, uncles, grandparents, and so forth. He was over at my mom's house, and I don't know if he just assumed my dad was on a really long vacation. I'm like, hey, but that's a really long vacation, okay? That's a sabbatical you ain't never heard of, but he's, But as they're going through different photos, my mom lets him know that my dad is in heaven with Jesus. And he just lost it. Like he just didn't know what to do. He was crying for a couple of days. And he was about 14 months old when my father passed, so in my mind, it was a little bit of a delayed reaction. I'm like, buddy, not gonna judge you, but it's been a while, but it wasn't like we told him. I mean, at 14 months, like, hey, grandpa, like, it's kind of a weird conversation, It's just like, he's just not here. And so over the course of time, we've been teaching him the very little we know about heaven, because I've never been, but I've heard some great things in the Bible. And so now he's just so fascinated with life after death. He's so fascinated now that we were at church the other day and I had parked by some tall grass and we could walk around it, but it was just kind of more of a shortcut to walk through it. And so we're walking through this tall grass and he goes, Dad, there's a snake in here and it's gonna bite me and then I'll be dead and then I'll be with the angels singing, hallelujah. I go, what just happened? How did we go? Buddy, we've really swung the pendulum on this life after death deal. Like, you're kind of like looking forward to it, and that's concerning for me, all right? And then a couple of weeks ago, I'm putting him to bed, and we're praying and reading the Bible before he goes to sleep, and he says, hey, Dad, will I have my own house in heaven? I said, buddy, I think that's how it works because you're not living with me. I need my own space. This is an earth deal. You understand? And then he says, all right, we got separate houses. He goes, do you think that my house can be next to yours? I said, buddy, listen, I don't know how the zip codes work there. I don't know the zoning protocol. I'm sure there's a process to it, but here's the deal. I'll tell you what. My guess is I'm gonna get there before you. And if there's an open lot next to me, I'll try and save it, okay? That's what I'm gonna try and do for you. Now, in the event you get put on the other side of heaven, don't worry, Daddy and Grandpa will come running the minute you get there. Now, I can't promise you I'm gonna get there fast because I don't know if there's Uber in heaven. I don't know how fast I can get to you, but rest assured, we're coming. Ladies and gentlemen, the big idea of this series is that a proper perspective on death is the key to true life. And I love how Solomon puts it in Ecclesiastes 3. He says, there is a time for everything and a season for every activity under the heavens. And then in a very poetic style, he goes on to list different ends of spectrums that there are seasons for. The first one is in verse 2. He says, there is a time to be born and a time to die. The UN estimates that around 385,000 babies are born each day around the world. That's 140 million a year. According to an article published by the Bioethics Research Group at Georgetown University, 65 million people die each year in the world. That's about 178,000 each day. 7,425 each hour, 120 each minute. In other words, we are popping out humans faster than we're putting them in the ground. There's a time to be born, and there's a time to die. Solomon just rips off the Band-Aid to kick off this chapter. He's like, life has seasons. You're gonna die, and you're going to live. He goes on to say this. He says, there's a time to plant and a time to uproot, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to tear down and a time to build, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to scatter stones and a time to gather them. Another way of saying this is there could be a time where you can spend or give away, and then there's another time where we need to be saving. I found that most families just pick one or the other. Either you're spending all the time or you're saving all the time. Solomon's going, there's a season for both. He goes on to say a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to search and a time to give up, a time to keep and a time to throw away. There's some hoarders who needed to hear this verse today. Let it go. He says there is a time to tear and a time to mend, a time to be silent and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace. There's a season for everything. Aren't we all glad that there are seasons that are just seasons? I mean, if there is going to have to be a season for that thing, aren't we glad that it was only a season? For example, renting movies from Blockbuster, season. It was just a season where most Friday nights, that's how you started off date night. You just go to Blockbuster and walk around for an hour. Babe, they got Twizzlers. Isn't this great? It was just a season. We should leave it there in that season. Thank God for streaming. Remember that time that everyone thought Popeyes had a better chicken sandwich than Chick-fil-A? Season. It was just a season. The Vikings going to the Super Bowl 4 times in the 70s and losing, it was just a season. No need to keep mourning. That was just a season. To get more personal, that high school crush you thought you would marry, it may have even begged God for on one or two occasions? Season. And aren't you grateful that it was just a season? For those of you who are in a great financial space, aren't you grateful you no longer have to stretch your last $100 to make it to the next paycheck? And for those of you in that place now, won't you be grateful when that season is over? Even how we see seasons seem to be seasonal. At one point in your life, you're going, Lord, give me that promotion into that new role so I don't have to do this work anymore. And then a few months later, you get that promotion. And now your prayer has changed. Lord, this responsibility isn't what I thought it was. And the pay increase doesn't make up for all of these crazy people I got to work with now. Isn't it interesting? That was once an answer to prayer has now created a new kind of prayer request. Seasons. As it relates to our season this weekend, I want us to do three things. The first thing is vitally important, and that's, I think we all have to recognize our season. Recognize our season. And one of the key words here is "are." Because the temptation we might have is to compare our season to their season. It's hard when you're single and your friends get engaged. Sometimes you're unhappily married and watching your single friends happily go on dates. Seasons. Sometimes people are experiencing a Job-like season who in the Bible had a rough go of things for a season in his life. I've sat on the phone with people who it seems like all they ever have is bad news. You ever talk to some of these people, you're just like, man, you just can't catch a break. Lost their job, car broke down, lost a loved one, dog got sick, kids got sick, can't find a job to save their life, parked somewhere where they weren't supposed to and got booted. Their kid got a DUI. They got a letter from the IRS saying they owed the amount they thought they were getting a refund for. I mean, for some people, when it rains, it pours. There are some people I look and I just think, what did you do? And then there's those other people. When you talk to them, it's like they have the Midas touch. It's like everything they touch turns to gold. It's like they never get sick. They got a second house near the beach. They're only your neighbors during the summer. Their whole life is room temperature. It's annoying, okay? You don't even really think about them until you're shoveling snow. Like, have y'all seen you know what? I can't stand. Like all of a sudden, you start thinking of these people. They get a raise every year. Their bonus is most people's annual salary. Their company pays for their Tesla. Their metabolism is that of a 15-year-old, and they're in their 50s. Their children are on D1 scholarships. You want to be happy for them, but they don't need your happiness to have their own. They're good without you. Ladies and gentlemen, we don't have to compare our season to someone else's. But I do think we need to recognize the season that we're currently in. Hey, God, is this a season where I really need to buckle down and really get planted somewhere and put down some roots? Or is this a season for us to uproot, make some changes, maybe even move? Solomon said there's a time to search and a time to give up. Is this a season that you should keep trying? Or is this a season where maybe you need to give up? Maybe to keep you motivated, I'm supposed to tell you, never give up. But I'd rather tell you to pay attention to the season you're in right now and ask God what you're supposed to be doing. Is this a season where you're supposed to be the loudest voice in the room? Or is this a season where you're supposed to be the one silent in the corner, taking notes on everyone to make sure they feel heard? I don't know. But I do think you should find out. Is this a mourning season for you? Maybe you've lost a loved one, a job, or a marriage. Yet you're pretending like it's a dancing season. Sometimes we laugh to keep us from weeping. Sometimes the funniest person in the room has the most pain. What I would hate to happen for you and for me is in a season when we're supposed to be grieving, we tried to rush through that season and ignore it altogether. What I would hate to happen for you and for me is in a season when we're supposed to be laughing and dancing, we didn't stop and smell the roses. If we're gonna recognize our season, I think the question we're gonna answer this weekend is, what season am I in? And maybe on the way home in the car, maybe over dinner, maybe in a small group, you answer this question as a group. Not just what season are you in individually, but maybe even as a family. Maybe in your marriage, you're looking at your spouse and saying, hey, what season are we in? Because a pandemic could kind of put some people in chill mode, and maybe it's time to kick it in gear. Maybe it's a new season. And for some people on the other side of the pendulum, you're going way too fast, and maybe it's a season to slow down. You have to recognize the season that you're in and what you're supposed to do next. The reason we have to recognize the season we're currently in is because of the second thing I believe we all have to do with our seasons, and it's this: give our best to our current season. Give our best to our current season. Sometimes the temptation is that we'll give our best to the next season, a better season, a married season, a dream job season, a retired season. But I have to encourage you to give your very best to this current season. When it comes to our seasons, we have a habit of dwelling on past seasons and worrying about the future seasons. I love what Solomon says in Ecclesiastes. He says, he has made everything beautiful in its time. He has also set eternity in the human heart, yet no one can fathom what God has done from beginning to end. I know that there is nothing better for people than to be happy and to do good. Watch this next part. While they live. Solomon nor I am going to sugarcoat it today. You're going to die. So before then, you might as well live. Be happy and do good while you're alive, because once you're not, you can't. That's how it works. Give your absolute best to the season you are in. If you are in a season of mourning, really mourn, my friend. Weep, bawl your eyes out. Make sure you squeeze everything that you possibly can from that season, because once it's over, you can't get it back. If you are in a season where you're really struggling with your place at your job, give your best to that season. Show up and work your tail off. Do your job with integrity. Show up early. Because here's what I believe with all of my heart. How you handle your current season will determine what happens in your next season. So give your best right where you're at. If you're in a season of disappointment, be honest about it and give your best while being in a season of disappointment. Because what we don't want to happen is to look back on seasons of our life and have regrets. If you're single, enjoy the season. I know quite a few married people who wish they had your free time. Enjoy it. Give your best to that season. If you're dating, enjoy that season. If you're engaged, enjoy that season and try not to kill each other before you say, I do. If you're married without children, enjoy that season. If you're married with children, that's a whole different kind of marriage. And you should also enjoy and give your best to that season. If you're a single parent, I wish it was different. And I know it's hard. But there's no rule that says tough seasons can't be enjoyed. If your kids are driving you crazy, enjoy it. I've heard from empty nesters that when it's quiet that first week, it feels great. But after about a month, you begin to think, maybe I told them to quiet down a little bit too much. It's interesting. They find themselves walking through the house, and after a while, they begin to miss the noise. The thing that drove them the craziest is now the thing they miss the most. Can I encourage you, if you have any sort of chaos in your life, in your home, enjoy it while it lasts. Because I'm noticing a trend with parenting that seems to be a constant movement of worrying about their children in every season of their life. When they're little, it's like, they should be walking by now. They should be walking by now. What's going on? They should be talking by now. What's going on? They should be able to do algebra by now. They're 6. I don't think they should be doing algebra right now. I think we need to chill just a little bit. They should be taller. I thought they would be taller. You're 5'2". What did you think was gonna happen? You know, it's like, they should have gotten their license by now. When I was their age, I had a permit already. They're 18, they're still bumming off me. They're Ubering, I don't know, something's off. They should be getting better grades. Did I let them watch too much TV, too much iPad time? I should have put them in sports. Man, maybe I put them in too many sports. We didn't do enough Bible studies. And before you know it, every season of their life, when you look back on it, you've been worried the whole time. And at some point, I just gotta encourage you, pause long enough to go, man, maybe I should just enjoy the season that they're in. What's the old adage when it comes to parenting? The days are long and the years are short. Hey, whatever season you find yourself in with your family, enjoy it, even if they're crazy. They're the only family you got. So you might as well enjoy them, because guess what? Enjoy the season, because it could be over tomorrow. Some people might think that that's morbid. I think it's liberating. My son, he started club basketball, and I felt this wave of anxiety on whether or not he'd be good enough, like I was out there playing. And I'm at one of his basketball games, and I'm biting my nails, and I just had to stop and pause. Just enjoy him being an 8-year-old. And then I have to go home and enjoy my other son being a 3-year-old, because he thinks he's Spider-Man and loves crawling up things that are at a height that also bring me about a wave of anxiety. And there's times where I just have to let him be Spider-Man at a safe height and let him throw spider webs at me, and I have to pretend like my hand is stuck to the wall and just enjoy it. Because from what I've heard, all right, my oldest is 8, and you can tell me, I heard that they turn into teenagers who are too cool for their dad. And when that season comes, it may be time for me to let go and let them grow into the men God has called them to be. And also in that season, I will have to let them know, if you ever act too cool for your dad, I will cut off your cell phone. Ladies and gentlemen, seasons. I want you to give your best to your season. The second question I want you to answer this weekend is, am I giving my best to this season I'm in? Good, bad, or ugly? Are you giving your best to this season? Because whatever season we're in, we have to recognize whatever that season is. We have to give our very best to it. And lastly, and most importantly, we have to make sure we invite God to our season. I know way too many people who are going through a really tough season, and they think they're just gonna crawl their way out. I got this. No, you don't. No, you need a God, and so do I. I love what Solomon says at the end of Ecclesiastes 3. He says, so I made up my mind that there's nothing better for us men and women than to have a good time in whatever we do. That's our lot. I've been given a lot, pun intended. You've been given a lot. Whatever our lot is, we need to invite God to the lot. I think wedding vows mirror the poetic style of Ecclesiastes 3. For better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish until death do us part. Sometimes we're in a better season Sometimes it's worse. Sometimes we're in a season of surplus. Sometimes we're in a season where we're trying to make ends meet. Sometimes we get a clean bill of health. Sometimes we get diagnosed with cancer. Regardless of the lot we've been given and how we feel about it, the biggest regret any of us could have at the end of our life is looking back on any season of it and realizing we failed to invite God to be in it. What would be a shame is if we had a season of life experiencing the finer things of life and didn't take time in that season to give God glory. And it would also be a shame if we went through dark times and didn't take time in that season to let God walk with us. One of my best friends is a pastor who has a campus in Florida whose city was absolutely devastated last month. And his particular campus is one of few buildings left standing in their part of the city from Hurricane Ian. Then as we were talking about people at his church who evacuated their homes and returned to a pile of rubble, some of them have lost family photos that no amount of insurance can ever bring back. And as we started talking about some of the things that they were wrestling with theologically, we began to talk about how people see God in seasons of crisis. And what's interesting to me is I don't actually believe you can really see God until you're in a season of crisis. Because it's easy to see the goodness of God when things are going well. But it isn't until you've lost something you hold dear and see his goodness there that I believe you've truly experienced God. When you've lost something that you hold dear, when your house has literally come crumbling down, and you can stand in front of a mess and still go, I think God's good in every season of my life, good, bad, and ugly. When I look back over my life, God was with me and his goodness was with me every step of the way. Last question I want you to answer this weekend. Whatever your season is, have I invited God to my current season? I don't know the state of your marriage. I don't know what's going on with your kids. I don't know what's going on at your job. I don't know the pressure you might feel at school. But what I would encourage you to do this weekend is invite God into that season. When I look back on my life, I know without a shadow of a doubt, through the ups and downs, through mountaintop experiences and valley lows, God has been good in every season. And I want to make sure that when I look at my current season, that I'm consistently looking for his goodness here as well. Over these next few moments, we're going to end service just a little bit different. I'm going to invite you to sing about the goodness of God. And for some of us, it might just be a declaration over what our season actually looks like. And I just want you to invite the goodness of God to be a part of your season. So at every location, I want us to stand to our feet, and we're going to sing about the goodness of God. Join us as we sing.
God, thank you that those words are true. God, that no matter what season we find ourselves in today, maybe it's a season of joy, of celebration, or God, maybe we came in here carrying something really heavy, a burden that was never meant for us to carry, Jesus. But no matter where we find ourselves, you are good and you are faithful. There's nothing that we could do to change that. It's in your nature. That's who you are. So God, thank you for this time and this place where we can come just as we are and be reminded of that. And Lord, I just ask that as we leave here today, that we would lean into that truth, Jesus. And that our lives would reflect more of who you are, Jesus, and that they would bring you glory. So God, we're so thankful for who you are, what you're doing in our lives. We love you. We pray this in your name. Amen. Amen, everybody. Thanks for being here. If you need prayer, there'll be a prayer team down front that would love to pray with you. Otherwise, we'll see you next week.